I'm just going to do a little, I'm going to do some calligraphy strokes, compositions. On one of them, I'm going to wet the surface of the paper, just because that's my challenge for the month. And let that sit and dry back to the right state. So I'm going to wet the front and the back with my big brush. Try not to push hard. I'm going to keep a gentle touch at all times whenever I contact the paper. Oh, apparently that wasn't clean. Great. So I'm going to let that sit for a minute and get really saturated. And so I'm going to do two compositions. Two compositions. One is going to be kind of a bamboo composition. So I'm just going to use a dark color. I have a purple here. It's called Cobalt Blue Violet. I just want a dark color. And I want to use the 3 strokes that we learned: the pull push, and the side stroke. So kind of, if we're going to do it authentically, I want to have 2 different versions, 2 different strengths of pigment in the same well. So I've got medium here and weak here. I'm using a number 10 low Cornell brush. It's a synthetic. It's got kind of a stiff bristles. So if I was doing truly Chinese or Asian painting, I'd want to have a softer bristle, but I'm adapting this to watercolor. So I've loaded up the brush with the weaker pigment. I'm going to hold it upright and push it back, tap off just a minute, and then I'm going to load the belly of the brush with the thicker pigment, and then I'm going to run the tip over the edge. And I need to get this out of my way just a little bit so I have freedom of movement, but I want to start with the stems, or the trunks of the bamboo. So I'm going to come right from off the paper. I want to use up the whole paper, and I'm going to hesitate at the end of the stroke, and skip a little space, hesitate at the beginning of the stroke, and then come off like that. So hopefully it's a little more contrast or more value on the side over here. That's what the triple load is all about. So I don't want to make them exactly straight up and down. So now I'm going to come up on the angle of my brush to make a thinner branch. So I'm going to start off the paper, hesitate, come onto the paper, hesitate. So the steeper the angle, the thinner the bamboo. Now I'm going to do one that comes across the 2. Come off the paper, come in, and then maybe have it go like that. Okay, so those are the bamboo stalks, and while that's sitting there, I'm going to go ahead and dry this back a bit. So I'm going to try the same idea on damp paper, but I don't want it to be sopping wet. So I'm going to let that get damped back so I can do my wet and wet exercise that I'm supposed to be doing today. Okay, so those are the stalks. Now I want to give some leaves, bamboo leaves, to go with this. So I'm going to do some pull strokes, but I'm going to do the pull strokes the same way I did the stalks, which is a beginning I got to put the joints in. So this is a pull stroke, change direction, and then a little hitch at the back. So this I want pretty strong paint for. So pull stroke, so I'm up vertical on my brush. My handle is perpendicular to the paper. I'm gonna do a pull in one direction and let that go into the wet. I think that's cool. So pull in one direction, go across. Let's get some, and then a little hitch at the end. So we can really see it here. I'm going to go a little to the side just so you can see what I'm doing. So pull. You can do it all in one movement if you want. I'm going to just darken this one up a little bit. So I'm moving my brush to the side just so you can see what I'm doing here. And this one. Okay, so then let's see. So now I need some stock. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hesitate at the beginning of the stroke, and then I'm going to pull, and I'm going to hesitate at the end. Skip a little spot, start again. Hesitate, pull, come off. Hesitate, pull, hesitate, come off. So those, now I'll do some that are lighter, so they're not all the same value. Hesitate, pull. Just a little hesitation at the beginning. Let's do some that go across. Maybe behind. Most of the time the sub branches come off the joints. You can have some that are coming from off the page, maybe for another stock that's, you know, further down. So those are the stalks, bamboo stalks, and some sub branches. Now let's start to do some leaves. So this is a combination of a pull and a push. So again, we're going to start kind of at the joint. I'm going to start with weaker pigment to begin with. I'm going to do a pull up, change direction, push down, and then come off. Didn't load my brush very well. I'm going to repeat that one. Pull up, push down, and come off. And I don't want to come up quickly. I want to take off gently and slowly as I come up. Go right across. Maybe go the other direction. Maybe we'll have some little ones coming out. Going off in a different direction. So I'm going to start with just high value ones. You can put a little bit of twist in them, but it's more elegant if you keep them kind of straight. Sometimes you can go straight into the push and come off. Okay, now let's thicken our pigment a bit and get some value variation. So the darker it is, the closer it feels to the viewer. So you just don't want them to be all one value. We can do the same thing. We can bring this bamboo stock a little closer by making it darker. So a hitch, push, pull off. Try to keep the brush vertical throughout the movement. The brush handle. Just gonna buck up that side of that just a little bit, just to get some value variation in there. So that's the bamboo stroke. Now using the same basic strokes, maybe one variation on the new one, we'll do an orchid plant on dry paper. So this is getting back to a point where I like it. I'm going to try it on the damp paper. We'll see how different the effect is. So we'll start with the, I'm going to use a little bit different color of red. I'm going to bring in my purple, my red violet into there, just to make it a little different than the other one. So I'm going to start with tea, mix in some medium, and then have that. So roll around, tap off. Okay, so this time I'm going to do the pull, a long gentle pull, then I'm going to push down, I'm going to pull up, keep the stroke going, and push again and change direction, so I get kind of a grassy effect. So if I roll it around in the weaker pigment, tap off, and then put some strong, we should get an effect that's really cool. Let me try it. So push, pull up, shift, go a different direction. That tip being a little bit darker should put a vein down the middle of the leaf at the same time you do the stroke. So let's try that again. Let's do some, just go straight up this time. Let's go ahead and cross over. Thick on the tip. Tap off. I think I need some weaker pigment. It's going to create a background if I overdo it, but you want a variation in value. Okay, now let's do some pull strokes. This is the stems that'll carry the orchid. You can do these first or last. So just, there's not the push in the middle, it's just the pull. And those are what will hold the blossoms. So for the blossoms, I like to keep it kind of weak to start with, and they come off. It's just a little movement. I'm going to do it to the side a little bit just so you can see what I'm doing, but I'm going to push, twist, and pull up. Push, twist, and pull up. It's a very small movement. And there's just a hint of orchid flowers, and they kind of alternate. Sometimes the flowers on one side. So this is on damp paper. So it's just a little push and a twist and a pull up, but in the opposite direction. Let's put some over here. Very small movements. Almost making a little apostrophes. Just want hints of flowers, so let's do one here where there's if you get one right, the rest will read correctly. Let's put some little grasses down at the bottom here that are just pull strokes. Make some that are strong, some that are weak, and maybe a flurry of little bugs flying around or something. So that was actually on damp paper. Probably let it dry just a little too much. You can also do a little splattering to get your dot strokes. Maybe pull something in from the other direction. Just some grasses over here. Pull, push. So I'm using a little bit smaller brush. You don't have to use a smaller brush. I find it's easier with those little flowers. It's easier with a little bit smaller brush. So I'm just going to put those little center guys a little darker. They're just little parentheses at the end, just to get some value variation. Let's get one dark leaf. So I'm getting really strong pigment. Tap off a little bit and really load up that center. And we'll get 1, 2 dark leaves. So those are 2 compositions for just using our calligraphy strokes. I want to do this one a little wetter than that one was, because that was a little too dried back. Maybe for this one I'll use both colors. Both of my purple colors. Let that sit for just a minute, get it pretty wet. I had this piece of paper, I had to have this in a plein air competition, so I had to have it stamped. So that's the back side. This is the front side. So I'm going to go into this one a little bit wetter and see what happens. Going quicker. So that was damp, that was dry. Same cold pressed paper. So let's do an orchid with 2 different colors. We'll start with tea, load up the tip, tap off. There we go. Now this is on wet paper, so we should get a foggier effect. Oops. Get back on camera. Let's change to the blue violet. Go ahead and put the stems. They're going to hold my leaves. So it was really wet there, so I've kind of lost the shape. Kind of like it though. So let's do our little grasses, our little splatter. Do push, pull, pull off. Let's do our ground. Have some grasses come this direction too. Not make them all the same. Do a little short push. Little do some red violet ones. Okay, we'll do a little bit of the flowers. Change up the color. As that dries off a little bit, I might want to see if I can get a shape to hold its form in there. Get stronger pigment. So the ones on the end are older. These start to wither, and then the ones, sometimes there's just buds down here. And they kind of alternate sides of the stem. And then they start to bloom towards the end of the stem. This one, I'll put a couple buds down in there. And let's get some blue violet. Back up that stroke. Do a little splattering. See if we like it wet and wet better or wet on dry better. That looks like it ends. I'm going to continue that stroke over. It's looking awful strokey. Okay, that's all I'm going to do. Thanks for watching.